Welcome to the Crawlcast. I'm your host, George Krawczak, and this is what happened in Week 12 of the NFL season. And if you like this type of content, make sure to hit that subscribe button like it owes you money. And I also just want to mention I'm still a little bit sick, so this video will be a little quicker than usual, but let's get started. The first game is the Buffalo Bills versus the Houston Texans, and the Texans won 23-19. So the Texans won 23-19. The Texans' leading passer was Davis Mills, who threw for 153 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their leading rusher was Woody Marks, who had 74 rushing yards. And their leading receiver was Nico Collins, who had 55 receiving yards. For the Bills, their leading passer was Josh Allen, who had 253 yards and 2 interceptions. Their leading rusher was James Cook, who had 116 yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver was Khalil Shakir, who had 110 receiving yards. So the Texans' defense is the story of this game. They largely shut down Josh Allen, and their defense has been elite this entire season and kept them in games. The problem is their offense. It struggled to do much of anything. I would say Davis Mills and CJ Stroud are probably about equal in terms of the way they're playing, because neither of them are playing that great. Maybe Davis Mills over this past couple of game stretch has been playing slightly better than CJ Stroud, but I'd basically call them even. And this offense has just been struggling and letting them down in these games, but their defense is still really, really elite. And then Josh Allen and the Bills. It feels like they're still missing their number one receiver. They did sign Brandon Cooks, so hopefully that'll help them out a little bit. But overall, that's concerning. And then Keon Coleman was benched in this game. Last week he was benched because it was reported that he was, I can't remember, either late or missed a team meeting, which I think is completely fair. You need to hold people accountable regardless of if they're a top pick or not. Like CJ Stroud CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens were both benched for a drive because of their partying in the Dallas versus Las Vegas game. So I totally get keeping people held accountable, but at this point this week, it seems like he was just benched, and I think that's a mistake because even though Keon Coleman hasn't been that guy yet and hasn't played well yet, they don't have anybody left. I think Khalil Shakir is a good receiver. He's a good slot guy, but he's not really a number one. So I just because there's no one else, you can't tell me Gabe Davis is that much better than Keon Coleman. So I just think that's just a mistake benching him. So overall, the Bills, man, it's just tough because their defense isn't that great, and it feels like if Josh Allen can't be perfect, if there's a team that can shut him down, the offense is just screwed. And then the Texans, at least their defense is playing at elite level. That's what it's always been. It's just that the offense, CJ Stroud had a pretty decent rookie season, and then after that, the offense just has not been able to do anything. So if they can have just some competent quarterback play, whether it's CJ Stroud or Davis Mills or whoever, then they should be a good team. It's just that I don't know if they can get that. The next game is the Indianapolis Colts versus the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Chiefs won 23-20. So the Chiefs won 23-20. The Chiefs' leading passer was Patrick Mahomes, who threw for 352 yards and an interception. Their leading rusher was Kareem Hunt, who rushed for 104 yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver was Rashid Rice, who had 141 yards. For the Colts, their leading passer is Daniel Jones, who had 181 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their leading rusher is Jonathan Taylor, who had 58 rushing yards. And their leading receiver was Ashton Dulin, who had 48 receiving yards. So in this game, it was kind of a bit of a messy game on both sides. The Chiefs looked pretty good, but they kept making stupid mistakes. Mahomes threw a bad interception, and there was a bad fumble by Kareem Hunt. It was just mistake after mistake. But overall, the Chiefs felt like they dominated. Because what happened is, this Chiefs defense is still really good, and they completely shut down Jonathan Taylor. And they were basically like, okay, Daniel Jones, if you beat us, you beat us. And Daniel Jones just couldn't do that. I understand the Colts going all in because I think they're unexpectedly good, and I don't really think there's a powerhouse in the AFC right now. I think all the AFC teams are relatively beatable, so I don't know when the Colts are going to have another opportunity to be a good team again, but it just concerns me, Daniel Jones, because it feels like this is the strategy where if you can shut down Jonathan Taylor, Daniel Jones is not good enough to beat you on his own. And with Daniel Jones, it's okay, he can work off the play action. If if you're fighting for Jonathan Taylor and it could be a handoff or it could be a pass, then he can kind of beat you on those. But just kind of saying, okay, we're shutting down Jonathan Taylor. You beat us one-on-one. He just struggles to do that. So I am worried about the Colts. The past few weeks, after Daniel Jones had an amazing season, he has been struggling quite a bit. And then the Chiefs. Like, this is the team that kind of keeps screwing me on picks because I keep picking them to win and they keep losing. But overall, like, the Chiefs are trying to make the playoffs, and I struggle to acknowledge the fact that there's a possibility the Chiefs could miss the playoffs. Obviously, it's possible. I think it's very, very unlikely. So the Chiefs keep on winning and get closer and closer to the playoffs. The next game is the Seattle Seahawks versus the Tennessee Titans, and the Seahawks won 30-24. So the Seahawks won 30-24. The Seahawks leading passer is Sam Darnold, who threw for 244 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their leading rusher is Kenneth Walker, who had 71 rushing yards. And their leading receiver was Jackson Smith-Njigba, who had 167 yards and 2 touchdowns. For the Titans, their leading passer is Cam Ward, who threw for 256 yards and a touchdown. Their leading rusher is Cam Ward, who had 37 rushing yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver was Gunnar Helm, who had 51 receiving yards. So in this game, it kind of went a little bit how expected in the sense where it was closer than you expect, but Seahawks got the win and played well. Jackson Smith-Njigba has had an insane year this year and is playing extremely well. And then for the Titans, like, one of these games they're pulling out. Like, this does show a little bit of confidence that Cam Ward these past few weeks has been playing better, and they've been feisty, and like, it's kind of better that they lose because they'll get a top draft pick, and either they can draft the top prospect in the draft or trade that pick away for a lot of picks and maybe some other talent, and then have that team draft the quarterback, like maybe the Browns or the Raiders or somebody. But it is interesting because the Titans, like I said, they just keep getting better. They needed to play well, and one of these games they're going to pull it off. They've been playing really close games, and I think it is building confidence slowly in Cam Ward, and he has been playing better. And then Seahawks, you have one of the top records. You're fighting for the first place in the NFC, so you got to be happy with the win. The next game is the Minnesota Vikings versus the Green Bay Packers, and the Packers won 23-6. So the Packers won 23-6. The Packers' leading passer is Jordan Love, who threw for 139 yards. Their leading rusher was Emmanuel Wilson, who had 107 yards and 2 touchdowns. And their leading receiver is Christian Watson, who had 49 receiving yards. For the Vikings, their leading passer is J.J. McCarthy, who had 87 passing yards and 2 interceptions. Their leading rusher is Jordan Mason, who had 42 rushing yards. And their leading receiver was Justin Jefferson, who had 48 receiving yards. So Jordan Love didn't do much in this game, but also he didn't really need to. The defense just dominated and absolutely destroyed this Vikings offense. And one thing I also want to point out, Emmanuel Wilson came in for injured Josh Jacobs, and he played great. And I think the issue is that the Packers' offensive line is so terrible that they needed someone like that, where Josh Jacobs, he's more of a downhill runner, and he's not really good at evading tackles once he gets hit immediately behind the line of scrimmage. And Emmanuel Wilson is a nice change of pace and more of an elusive back, and I can see in the future him kind of getting a lot more carries in this offense. And then the Vikings, man, it's rough because it feels like this is a championship caliber team. Their defense is pretty good. Their offense should be good with Aaron Jones at running back, a halfway decent offensive line. I know it got destroyed by the Packers, but I think the Packers defense is just that good. And then they have probably the best receiving duo in the NFL, and maybe the Bengals are better, but with Jordan Addison, TJ Hockenson, and Justin Jefferson. So I don't know what you do with J.J. McCarthy. I think after one bad year, it's way too early to give up on him because he has had some nice throws, but the problem is he's starting to remind me a little bit of Tim Tebow, whereas if you remember Tim Tebow, it'd be like the first 3 quarters of the game, he'd be like the worst quarterback in the NFL, and then the fourth quarter hit, he'd be like the best quarterback in the NFL, and that's how J.J. McCarthy, has has largely been. He has been terrible like the first 2 downs, but then once you hit third down or once you hit the red zone, he plays really good. Like, he's literally like clutch, but in all the other times he's terrible. And so I don't know what you do with him, but the Packers need this win because they're fighting for first place to the North and they're fighting for number 1 in the NFC, and they need this win more than anything. And then the Vikings, man, you just have to be worried about J.J. McCarthy. Like, hopefully he can show some improvement over the course of the season, but so far it's not looking good. The next game is the New York Jets versus the Baltimore Ravens, and the Ravens won 23-10. So the Ravens won 23-10. The Ravens' leading passer was Lamar Jackson, who threw for 153 yards. Their leading rusher was Derrick Henry, who had 64 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. And their leading receiver was Zay Flowers, who had 58 receiving yards. For the Jets, their leading passer was Tyrod Taylor, who had 222 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Their leading rusher is Breece Hall, who had 44 rushing yards. And their leading receiver is Breece Hall, who had 75 receiving yards. So this is interesting because, yes, the Ravens won, and yes, they are first place in the AFC North, but they did not look very good in this game. Their offense was almost completely shut down by the Jets defense. This Jets defense that has historically been terrible and has just gotten rid of their 2 best players in Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams. So at least with the Jets, you can say there's a little bit of proof of concept there, where even with bad players, they can play well, and then maybe once they start getting good players, they will be ready to win. But the Jets just can't win because their offense is just unmovable. They can't do anything. Justin Fields looked terrible last several weeks. Tyrod Taylor didn't look good this week. So overall, the Ravens got the win that they needed, but it did not look pretty. And that's kind of all I'll say there. The next game is the New York Giants versus the Detroit Lions, and the Lions won 34-27. So the Lions won 34-27. The Lions' leading passer was Jared Goff, who threw for 279 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Their leading rusher was Jahmyr Gibbs, who had 219 yards and 2 touchdowns. And their leading receiver was Amon-Ra St. Brown, who had 149 yards and a touchdown. For the Giants, their leading passer was Jameis Winston, who threw for 366 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Their leading rusher is Tyrone Tracy, who had 62 rushing yards. And their leading receiver is Wan'Dale Robinson, who had 156 yards and a touchdown. So in this game, the Lions really should have lost. The Giants were up ahead the entire game. They had a 4th down call that was very stupid. So on the goal line, they threw a ball incomplete when they were just trying to run down the clock. And then they went for it on 4th and 10. And when they could have kicked the field goal and been up and given the Lions 50 seconds to score a touchdown. It was just a stupid play call. It was really bad. And the Giants keep doing this. They keep losing games they should win. This is the 4th time in the season where they've been up by a lot in the final couple minutes and they should have won and they ended up blowing it. And then Jameis Winston, he just had an amazing catch. He absolutely killed Derek Barnes with a touchdown reception. And then the Lions, Jared Goff, he has not looked very good this year, but I'm wondering if maybe we have bad expectations for him, or unrealistic expectations for him, because what happened is last year, the Lions had the 2nd greatest offense of all time, which is also very surprising because they had an extra game to the 2015 Broncos, but they had the 2nd greatest offense of all time, and Jared Goff is a key part of that. And so now, are we expecting him to play like he did last year? And he's just not, because it's almost impossible to play that well, because again, keep in mind, historically 2nd greatest offense of all time. And then Jahmyr Gibbs, he was just insane. He put that Superman cape on his back and single-handedly won them this game. It does make me nervous for the Lions' future though, because I do not trust a running back. I understand Saquon Barkley basically did it last year, but generally speaking, I really don't trust a running back to be the sole reason you win or lose a game if they're playing well or not, because I feel like running backs are kind of too easy to shut down. But overall, this Lions offense kind of needs to figure some stuff out. I don't think they can rely on Jahmyr Gibbs every single game. Maybe they can, but Jared Goff just needs to play better, and then the defense needs to play better. I understand in the 4th quarter, the defense started playing better, but overall, this Lions defense has not performed up to expectations. The next game is the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Chicago Bears, and the Bears won 31-28. So the Bears won 31-28. The Bears' leading passer was Caleb Williams, who threw for 239 yards and 3 touchdowns. Their leading receiver was Kyle Monagai, who had 48 rushing yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver was DJ Moore, who had 53 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. For the Steelers, their leading passer was Mason Rudolph, who threw for 171 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Their leading rusher was Kenneth Gainwell, who had 92 rushing yards. And their leading receiver was Calvin Austin, who had 36 receiving yards. So this game was very close, kind of closer than it probably should have been. The Steelers defense did collapse a little bit. The Bears offense has been playing very well. There's a couple of bad throws by Caleb Williams that should have been intercepted, but Overall, he played relatively decent. And then this Steelers offense largely has been fairly decent under Rodgers, and they just couldn't do anything under Mason Rudolph. So you gotta imagine the outcome of this game would probably be different if Rodgers played instead of Rudolph. It's just that I understand the Bears are 8-3, but they kind of remind me of the Chiefs last year, where the Chiefs are like 11-0 in one-score games, and I think the Bears are like 8-0 in one-score games. And it feels like one-score games could really go either way, where like they don't necessarily count as a win because obviously if you win, you get the win. But it's like, oh, okay, if one play went differently, this whole game would have changed. And so the Bears just don't feel like they feel like a good team, but they're not like number one in the NFC good team. And so overall, the Bears, you got to be happy with a win. And then the Steelers, unfortunately, they're tied with the Ravens. There's basically going to be two games of Steelers versus Ravens, and whoever wins those two games is going to win the division, plain and simple. The Browns are out, the Bengals are out. And so overall, just it's going to be close who wins the AFC North. The next game is the New England Patriots versus the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Patriots won 26-20. So the Patriots won 26-20. The Patriots' leading passer is Drake May, who threw for 294 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Their leading rusher is Travion Henderson, who had 66 rushing yards, and their leading receiver was Hunter Henry, who had 115 yards and 1 touchdown. For the Bengals, their leading passer is Joe Flacco, who threw for 183 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Their leading rusher was Chase Brown, who had 107 yards, and their leading receiver was Andre Izovias, who had 61 receiving yards. So honestly, it was kind of surprising how close this game was, really considering that I'd say the Bengals defense really stepped up and played much better than expected. And then the Bengals offense, I think they also played better than expected considering they didn't have Jamar Chase, which feels like half their games it's just chuck it up to Jamar Chase and see what happens. But overall, just the Patriots won this game. They needed to win this game. They're a better team than the Bengals. And so, Drake May needs to take care of the ball a little bit better, but this game kind of went exactly how it should have been and exactly what you expected. So, Patriots got the win, and that needed to happen. The next game is the Cleveland Browns versus the Las Vegas Raiders, and the Browns won 24-10. So the Browns won 24-10. The Browns' leading passer was Shedeur Sanders, who threw for 209 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Their leading rusher was Quinshon Judkins, who had 47 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. And their leading receiver was Dylan Sampson, who had 59 receiving yards and a touchdown. For the Raiders, their leading passer was Geno Smith, who threw for 285 yards and 1 touchdown. Their leading rusher was Ashton Jeanty, who had 50 rushing yards. And their leading receiver is Tyler Lockett, who had 62 receiving yards. So the big talk about this game is Shedeur Sanders. And this is what I'll say about him. Everyone's saying he had one amazing throw, which is true. He had one really great, 50-yard throw to Isaiah Bond. And everyone's like, oh, look at this throw. He's obviously amazing and the franchise guy. And then he also had one absolutely terrible interception, and everyone's like, oh, look at that interception. He's definitely not the guy. Can't be a starting quarterback. Absolutely terrible. And here's the truth about it. It's just a very small sample size. Yes, he had one good throw. Yes, he had a couple of terrible throws. This is what I say about it is I think he played just okay. I don't think he played bad enough where you say, oh, he's definitely not the franchise guy, can't be a starting quarterback, he's terrible. But I also don't think he played good enough where you say, oh, he's definitely a franchise guy, definitely really good. So, honestly, it feels like an incomplete grade. And then you also have to put the big asterisk next to it is that it's against the Raiders, who have one of the worst defenses in the NFL. So, honestly, in terms of his performance here versus Dylan Gabriel's performances, I say they're about tied. Neither of them have had that, special game where you say, oh, wow, he's really good. He's definitely the guy. And then neither of them have had that bad of a game where you're like, wow, he cannot play. He cannot be a quarterback. He's not good. So, I don't know what to say. Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel are basically equal, it feels like, in terms of kind of my rankings of them, because they've both kind of just played average, and that's it. I don't have much to say. Shedeur Sanders did have that amazing throw, but the Browns defense is an elite defense and completely shut down this Raiders team. And also, this Raiders team is 2-9 and not very good, and one of the worst teams in the NFL. Probably the only team worse than them is the Titans. So, I have nothing necessarily to say about Shedeur Sanders, where he did not play good enough where you can say, wow, that was a very good game. And he did not play bad enough where you can say, wow, that was a terrible game. he just played average, and that's it. So, and then the Raiders, they're just an absolute disaster. I don't know if Pete Carroll wants to retire after the season. I don't know if Geno Smith, they can stick with him, but they definitely need to blow things up. The Raiders are just terrible. And honestly, back to us talking about the Texans, that's what the Browns kind of feel like is like, as long as they can get some of their offensive woes like under control, they should be a playoff team. Their defense is that good, but I don't know if they can. The next game is the Jacksonville Jaguars versus the Arizona Cardinals, and the Jaguars won 27 to 24. The Jaguars won 27 to 24. The Jaguars' leading passer is Trevor Lawrence, who threw for 256 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. Their leading rusher is Travis Etienne, who had 86 rushing yards, and their leading receiver is Brenton Strange, who had 93 receiving yards. For the Cardinals, their leading passer was Jacoby Brissett, who had 317 yards and 1 touchdown. Their leading rusher was Michael Carter, who had 28 rushing yards. And their leading receiver was Michael Wilson, who had 118 receiving yards. So in this game, Trevor Lawrence just didn't play well. He really didn't. Like, you know how I talked about the Chiefs, how in my predictions they keep screwing me because I keep picking them to win and they lose a lot? This is the reverse. I keep picking the Jaguars to lose and they keep somehow winning. But I just don't believe in them. I don't think Trevor Lawrence is that good. He had some good throws, but he had a lot of horrendous throws where he's so inconsistent. Like, he's kind of reminding me a bit of Jameis Winston, where you just can't trust him. And then the Cardinals, their defense has been letting them down. Jacoby Brissett, he threw 49 attempts again. Like, he missed like half the season as a backup, but I'm wondering if he's getting close to like setting a record for most of the pass attempts in the NFL. That's what it's feeling like. It's like he's having like 50, 60 pass attempts a game. So, like, I don't know how much to say. Is like the Jaguars won and the Cardinals kept it close. The Jaguars defense is at least fairly decent, but I don't like Trevor Lawrence. I don't think the Jaguars are a playoff team, even though they have a good record. And then the Cardinals, they keep getting close, but they keep going on the losing side. Like, one of these times they'll get them, and it just feels like they're kind of very unlucky in what keeps happening to them. The next game is the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Dallas Cowboys, and the Cowboys won 24 to 21. So the Cowboys won 24 to 21. The Cowboys' leading passer is Dak Prescott, who threw for 354 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Their leading rusher is Javonte Williams, who had 87 rushing yards, and their leading receiver is George Pickens, who had 146 yards and 1 touchdown. For the Eagles, their leading passer is Jalen Hurts, who threw for 289 yards and 1 touchdown. Their leading rusher is Jalen Hurts, who had 33 rushing yards, and their leading receiver is A.J. Brown, who had 110 receiving yards and a touchdown. So the Cowboys, man. So the Eagles got up 21-0. This game looked over. It was done at halftime. And then the Cowboys just somehow came back. This offense completely stalled out. And honestly, that's how the Eagles offense has been for a majority of the season. Like, it stalled out against the Lions. It stalled out against the Packers. And the first, like, I can't remember what game again it was. I think it might have been against the Cardinals, where Jalen Hurts had like -8 passing yards and a half. And just this offense just can't control itself. And then the Cowboys, they came back, and George Pickens has been really, really good. And I understand CeeDee Lamb has been struggling with drops this year, which is true. But I just want to point out, for all the people saying George Pickens is so much better and why did Pittsburgh get rid of him, I want to point out a couple of things. Number one, George Pickens is now the number 2 receiver. All right, CeeDee Lamb is getting a lot of double teams, and CeeDee Lamb is usually having the team's top corner on him. So that frees up George Pickens to be the number 2, because he is like a number 1 receiver, but him being a number 2, absolutely phenomenal and can torch these number 2 corners. And then why the Steelers got rid of him? The Steelers didn't get rid of him because he was a bad player. They got rid of him because of his personality. He was starting fights. He seemed to be like a little bit like a locker room cancer. And once he's gone to Dallas, he's cleaned all that up. He's been really good, except for that time in Vegas. And that's why, like, it was his personality, not necessarily his on the field play. So the Eagles, man, they can't keep blowing it like this. They can't keep having duds. And then Saquon Barkley, he's just done nothing this season. He's been completely shut down, and it feels like when they need to rely on Jalen Hurts, they lose games. And then Cowboys had a very nice comeback. I still don't think they're a playoff team. This NFC is a very, very tough conference, but at least they got the win, and they're trying to claw themselves back after starting very, very poorly. And Quinnen Williams is definitely improving the defense and playing extremely well. The next game is the Atlanta Falcons versus the New Orleans Saints, and the Falcons won 24-10. So the Falcons won 24-10. The Falcons' leading passer was Kirk Cousins, who threw for 199 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Their leading rusher was Bijan Robinson, who had 70 rushing yards, and their leading receiver was Darnell Mooney, who had 74 receiving yards and a touchdown. For the Saints, their leading passer was Tyler Shough, who had 243 yards and an interception. Their leading rusher was Tyler Shough, who had 22 rushing yards, and their leading receiver was Chris Olave, who had 70 receiving yards. So this Falcons defense played extremely well. They played really, really good and really shut down the Saints offense. Kirk Cousins, he played just well enough to win. Like, he didn't play great. He didn't do anything special. And I've just been so disappointed in Kirk Cousins in the sense where I thought he was one of the top backups in the NFL, to the point where I'm like, does a team maybe risk taking on his massive contract and trade for him, like to be their quarterback, like the Vikings or a team like that? But he just seems done. Like, he just seems like he can't do it anymore. He needs his defense and everyone around him to kind of carry him. And I just thought he'd be better than that, and he hasn't. And then the Saints, they like neither of these teams are going to make the playoffs. Neither of these teams are that good, so this game didn't really matter. Uh, Tyler Shough played fine. Like he's played okay so far in his run. Like nothing special. So again, this game, Falcons got the win. No one looked particularly great, but the Falcons defense did step up and play pretty well. The next game is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus Los Angeles Rams, and the Rams won 34-7. So the Rams won 34-7. The Rams' leading passer was Matthew Stafford, who threw for 273 yards and 3 touchdowns. Their leading rusher was Kyren Williams, who had 46 rushing yards, and their leading receiver was Puka Nacua, who had 97 receiving yards. For the Buccaneers, their leading passer was Teddy Bridgewater, who had 62 passing yards. Their leading rusher was Sean Tucker, who had 42 rushing yards, and their leading receiver was Emeka Egbuka, who had 32 receiving yards. So the big news of this game, Baker Mayfield got injured. His arm is in a sling, and we don't know exactly what's going on, but it does seem like he will probably miss quite a bit of time. And then the Rams, they are the best team in the NFL. Matthew Stafford is the definitive MVP of the NFL. Him and Davante Adams on the goal line just feel unfair. It feels like it's cheating. And overall, the Rams just completely destroyed the Buccaneers. Teddy Bridgewater, he came in and looked absolutely terrible. And that does make me nervous because if Baker Mayfield's going to miss time, they just need someone that can steady the ship and help them sneak into the playoffs. Well, actually, it's not going to be that hard because their division's terrible. So they do have to worry about the Panthers, but I don't believe in the Panthers at all. So I do think they can easily win their division, but Teddy Bridgewater just needs to play a little bit better than he did. But man, this Rams team is elite. They're Super Bowl contenders. Matthew Stafford's the MVP, and it's tough to see who can stop them. Like, you need an elite defense. Like, maybe the Packers can, like, their elite defense can shut down Matthew Stafford, but even then it's going to be tough. So overall, the Rams are just probably the best team in the NFL. The next game is the Carolina Panthers versus the San Francisco 49ers, and the 49ers won 20-9. So the San Francisco 49ers won 20-9. The 49ers leading passer was Brock Purdy, who threw for 193 yards, 1 touchdown, and 3 interceptions. Their leading rusher is Christian McCaffrey, who rushed for 89 yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver is George Kittle, who had 78 receiving yards. For the Panthers, their leading passer is Bryce Young, who had 169 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Their leading rusher is Rico Dowdle, who had 38 rushing yards. And their leading receiver was Rico Dowdle, who had 36 receiving yards. So, yeah, Rico Dowdle had 36 receiving yards. So, in this game, like, Bryce Young had a really spectacular game last week. He played extremely well and carried the team to the win. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is this a new Bryce Young? Nope, back to the old Bryce Young, where he throws 100 yards a game and plays terrible. Brock Purdy returned, did not play well. Like, he played good last week. This week, he just didn't play well. He wasn't reading the field well. And McCaffrey really stepped in and saved the team. Sorry about that. And he just played extremely poorly. Brock Purdy did. And I saw that, like, maybe there's a quarterback competition. It's tough. Where if Brock Purdy has multiple bad games, maybe you talk about putting Mac Jones in. But at this point, Brock Purdy, you paid him so much money that if he can just play on par or maybe in slightly less than Mac Jones, you have to stick with him because you can't get rid of him. Mac Jones, you can probably trade him for like a second-round pick, but you can't get rid of Brock Purdy at this moment. And he just didn't play well. So I think the 49ers are slight frauds in the sense where, like, right now, it's basically between them and the Lions. It seems like for the 7th spot in the playoffs. I think the Lions are probably a little bit better of a team, but overall, just the 49ers just need to play better. And then the Panthers, they're a disaster. I think they're a fraudulent team. I don't think they have any shot at the playoffs. So that's what happened in Week 12 of the NFL season. If you like this type of content, make sure to hit that subscribe button like it owes you money, and I'll see you on the next one.